I am about to teach you how to make a delicious treat called candied bacon. Yes, I'm aware that Snoop Dogg popularized this, but I think that mine's better, and it only has 3 simple ingredients: bacon, brown sugar, and pepper. All right, for the hardware, what you are going to need is you're going to need a large baking sheet and a cooling rack, though in this case, it's not going to be doing a lot of cooling. I guess when it's done, you'll keep it on the cooling rack. The best thing that you can possibly use to make candied bacon is parchment paper. I absolutely swear by this stuff because it makes it a lot easier to clean up a mess. Imagine if all the bacon grease rendered out on this pan, you'd have a big mess. So you'll just take your parchment paper, make sure that it's enough to cover the pan, and peel it off. Always make sure you got plenty of parchment paper in stock. All right, we're gonna put this in between the baking sheet and the cooling rack. And if it's a large enough baking sheet, the cooling rack should fit right in. If you're using like a smaller one, you're gonna have some trouble. This one's a neat standing cooling rack that I found at Target, though I've seen that most of them are kind of a grid. But if we did it right here, it just kind of topple over. I suppose that you could make that work, but we wanna make sure that there's plenty of airflow that goes underneath the cooling rack. But we are gonna use this pan for something else. So make sure that your hands are clean, and you're gonna need a little bit more brown sugar than you think. So you're not gonna be cooking with this. So spread plenty of brown sugar out onto your cooling rack. I would say, if I had to guess, you're gonna need about, let's say, 3/4 of a cup. See, the bacon is going to get that in. Now, the thing with a lot of other recipes I've seen with candied bacon is that the bottom side isn't covered. So what they'll have you do is they'll have you put it on the cooling rack first and then put the bacon on there. We're gonna put the bacon in the brown sugar on both sides and then put it onto the cooling rack. One thing that is very important, or else you're gonna have a very bad time, is you want nonstick cooking spray. We're gonna spray a lot on this pan. And the reason why is because brown sugar is very sticky, and well, it's gonna stick to metal, it's gonna fuse to it. And then the best that you're gonna have is nice chunks. Now, I'm gonna be putting this on a salad a little bit later, and I'll show you the picture of the salad when it's done. But, so it's probably not so bad if it's all ripped up, but if you're just snacking on the bacon, then you're gonna need it to be pretty sprayed. All right, I've seen the memes about bacon packaging, and I'm like, there's a pretty simple solution. I'm about to show it to you. You might not have thought of it, but it's just a gallon size Ziploc bag. I want to thank you all for joining me for my very first gluten-free and a movie video. I'm really excited to be sharing all of these gluten-free recipes. All right, so I would say that the worst part about bacon packaging is not the fact that it's not resealable. I get that it can't really be resealable because it might oxidize or whatever. It's getting it open in the first place. All right, you may be asking, what kind of bacon should I use for this? And I'm actually going to recommend something a little bit strange. If your bacon is too expensive and too thickly sliced, then you're kind of gonna have a problem making it crispy in the end. I remember I accidentally bought super thick sliced bacon and tried to do candied bacon, and it did not work out well at all. So this is Aldi brand bacon. I tend to shop in like 3 main places, and that is Publix, Aldi, and Walmart. Those are in the US, and you aren't always going to be able to have them, but you should be able to find kind of something equivalent. So this bacon is kind of like cheap enough to where it's okay. Now, get your 6 slices out. I just like to go ahead and put them stack them in the pan to be prepared. Looks like that I might have gotten 7. Yeah, cheap bacon has its pros and cons, and I do like more expensive bacon on some things. But for this, definitely the cheaper stuff. It tastes better in the end product, or at least it's like has a better texture and is more crisp. We'll put that back in the bag for later. And actually, let's go ahead and store this up. First, I'm gonna wash my hands. I have a feeling that I'm gonna have to cut out washing hands more than anything else in this entire show. The way to store bacon is to open a Ziploc bag and stick the bacon in. Make sure you get all the air out. Congratulations. And obviously it goes in the refrigerator. Next steps when it comes to the bacon is go ahead and press it in on one side. Here, we'll go ahead and move everything out. Press it in on one side of the sheet pan. There you go. It's nice and coated. Flip it over. Press it in again. Just like that. Now, I'm okay with the pepper not being on both sides, but the brown sugar being coated on both sides is going to give it a very lovely flavor when it's not. Now, I've tried putting it over here and it all just kind of fell out. So with 6 slices of bacon, make sure to go with the wider end of the cooling rack. Well, if it's a square cooling rack, I guess that you have nothing to worry about. The brown sugar really goes pretty fast once it gets coated onto the bacon. So you may find yourself running out. So then you gotta wash your hands and put more brown sugar on there, but it's not the end of the world. I've also tried kind of balling it up and like putting it in a bowl to get the brown sugar on there, but I found that when you ball it up, it creates little spots that don't have any brown sugar, and then a lot of spots that do have brown sugar, so it's just very uneven. So this seems to be like the most even way to do it. And I am running out of room. Maybe we can make a little bit more. It's okay if they're just barely touching a little bit, but it's not okay if they're like right on top of each other. There we go. That should be good. All right. Do we have enough? Maybe I shouldn't have eyeballed it. But I'm going to say 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Now, I don't think you're going to end up eating 3/4 of a cup of sugar once you get like the finished product, because a lot of the sugar falls off and kind of melts with the bacon fat into the bottom. But what is left is absolutely delicious. All right, so the cool part about this recipe is as soon as we get the bacon onto the wire rack, then we put this whole apparatus into the oven. Now, that's gonna give us plenty of airflow going underneath. Now, you just wait for it. And I would set a timer for about 14 minutes. I'm just trying to teach everybody how to make candied bacon.
Isn't that Snoop Dogg's recipe?
It's my recipe first.
How do you know that?
Snoop Dogg didn't invent candied bacon. Candied bacon has been around for like centuries. So while we are waiting on the candied bacon, I'm going to be making the other ingredients for a salad, but that is for another video. What do you mean I turned off the oven on accident after preheating it? We're going to be posting all of these recipes along with some fun stuff over on the website as well. So I plan to have a video accompanying a post for each one of my recipes. One of the things that I like, that I'm trying to do differently from a lot of other food bloggers, is everything like seems so intense. And in this case, I don't want it to be so much. What I want is I want you to learn how to cook gluten-free. And I want it to be a very low pressure environment. If you've got to cook gluten-free, there's a good chance that you've got enough going on already to where you probably don't want to have like such high intensity energy trying to teach you how to do all these like complicated things, sounding kind of mad at you when you don't. I've watched a lot of cooking videos before this one, and they all just kind of come across that way, which is fun, and it's a very good way to learn for some people, probably myself included. But for me, I just want nice, chill vibes. I just want you to cook candied bacon with me and learn how to cook it for yourself. And I feel like that having the real hands-on approach to learning how to do it is really going to help with all of these recipes in the future. Nikki's the one who has celiac, not me, by the way. You know, you're not going to be able to hide from all of these videos forever, right? Okay. So anyway, last weekend we watched a couple of very interesting movies. Nikki hadn't seen The Lord of the Rings before, but I was a big fan. So we watched The Fellowship of the Ring, and she loved it so much that she wants to watch the other two this weekend. And I'm not sure, but we might do that. We also watched a super weird movie that you may have heard of. It's a Spielberg movie called AI, Artificial Intelligence. I almost always call it AI the Extraterrestrial or AI of the Third Kind, because his movies have a lot of double titles and I always get them confused. I hope that this blog and this video series provides a very helpful resource for people who can't have gluten for one reason or another. Gluten sensitivity is very common, and Nikki has it, and I just don't accept the idea that you, if you're watching this video and can't have gluten, cannot have good food. That seems really miserable to me. Restaurants, for the most part, just kind of don't care about you if you've got an issue with gluten. And I get it. The reason why is because, well, they want to make money, and there's a whole lot more people who can have gluten than who can't have gluten. So I think it's worth, for them, it's worth sacrificing it. And even if they do say it's gluten-free, you can't control every employee. So the best thing that you should do is to be able to cook for yourself, because I mean, they could have gluten exposure. I'm sure that you have probably encountered that before if you have issues with it. See, we got about 4 minutes left on the bacon. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull it out and I'm going to flip it. Getting the bacon off the pan is, whoops, my glasses are fogging up, and I'll bet the camera is too. Anyway, getting the bacon off the pan is like really funny. All right, so we've encountered a little bit of a problem, and it's not too bad of a problem. You can fix the fact that the bacon sinks into it by just giving it a nice flip. And that's why we set the timer for earlier, to go in here and give it a nice flip to the other side and correct any sort of issues. Now, if it were a thicker slice of bacon, you probably wouldn't have this problem, but we don't want burnt bacon. We want really sticky bacon. And that's why I'm going lower on temperature than Snoop Dogg with his 375. Flipping the bacon at this stage is very important because you really don't want it sticking to the pan. I can't promise that I'm not going to cut this, but also I might just keep it in because it's kind of funny how difficult this bacon is being this time. This is like the worst bacon I've had. I mean, now I did say I want it to be sticky, right? So I'm getting my wish. It's just being extra sticky today. So we're gonna set our timer for 5 more minutes. I'm using a silly camera mount, and I'm always worried about it falling off my head. Let's take a look at that bacon. And all right, I'm seeing some darker edges to the bacon, so we are gonna go ahead and take that out. And then the hardest part of cooking candied bacon is not actually cooking candied bacon. It's removing it from the pan, because you want it to sit there in the cooling rack long enough to be able to get a nice crisp, because the longer it sits there and cools, the crispier it's going to get. like the sugar is just going to crystallize. We are going to kind of move the bacon on the pan, and we're going to try to let it cool for about 4 minutes, and then we'll move it over to a cutting board. Our cat's name is Zora, if you hear Nikki calling Zora in the background. What you want is you want the bacon to be just like starting to take shape, because it's going to continue to crystallize as it cools off. Of course, you probably can't resist eating it right now, but if you can, let it crystallize for like 10 more minutes. It's probably time to get it off of the cooling rack because it's gonna stick. I like to put the pepper on at the very end. I know it seems weird, but the pepper will stick to the sugar at the very end a whole lot more than it will at the beginning. Make sure that you use fresh ground black pepper. And that was how to make candied bacon. Oh, and the good news is once this cools off long enough, and just let it sit there and harden, let it sit here and harden on the pan, and then what you can do is you can just take it, because all of the bacon grease will be solid, and you can just take it and throw it in the trash can. And thanks for making candied bacon with me.